Welcome to Wow Wednesday. Woman of worth, you are worth it. A woman with a voice is by definition a strong woman. But the search to find that voice can be remarkably difficult. Melinda Gates. Queen Esther in the Bible found her voice in a time when women were voiceless, only to be seen but not to be heard. She stepped into Queen Vashti's queendom. Vashti, queen of Persia, was the most powerful woman in the Middle East. Yet her power was as fragile as a candle in a storm. She was summoned by her husband, but she had no intention of parading herself like a prized cow in front of a herd of drunken men. She refused. Because of her conduct, men feared that disrespect and discord would never end, and other women would follow her pattern. As a result, she was banished from the royal presence. The kingmaker had become the kingdom culture destroyer. Hi, Susan here. Welcome to Wow Wednesday. Woman of worth, you are worth it. You have a voice and you need to feel empowered to use it. And people need to be encouraged to listen. We are looking at Esther. What is the meaning of her name? Her name is derived from Eshter, the Babylonian goddess of love, or from the Persian word for star. Her Hebrew name Hadassah means martyr. What was her character? She was an orphan in a foreign land. She was willing to conceal her Jewish identity in a bid for a pagan king's affection. Esther seemed willingly to make moral compromise by sleeping with the king and then taking part in a wedding that would require her to pay homage to foreign gods. Despite the circumstances, she displayed great courage in the midst of a crisis. Prior to risking her life for her people, she humbled herself by fasting, and then she put her beauty pageant status, her social grace, and wisdom in the service of God's plan. What was her sorrow? To learn that her husband, the king, had unwittingly placed her life and the life of her people in jeopardy. What was her joy? To watch her mourning turn to celebration once the Jews enjoyed relief from their enemies. Key scripture, the book of Esther, emphasis Esther 4:14, in the kingdom for a time such as this. Esther was in a dilemma. From other ancient sources, her husband, the king, was renowned for his irrational temper and fits of cruelty. Her dilemma: what will happen if she does nothing? Number 2, what will happen if she does what Mordecai, her mentor, had requested her to do? Put on the robe and rule. Even though Esther had been the king's wife for some time and lived in the palace, she appeared to have forgotten who she was. It was Mordecai who challenged her and reminded her of her identity. The Bible records that she put on her purple robes and went in to see the king. Sometimes, boldness needs to be put on like a robe. The king for the first time calls her queen. There was a transformation. He saw her as queen. No one entered the king's court uninvited and lived. But Esther now carried a power that transcends earthly rules. It moved the heart of the king and even promised even to half of his estate. Wow, what an inheritance for Esther. The book of Esther is the only book in the Bible not to mention the name of God or even prayer. Where, if any, do you see God in this story? Even though God is not mentioned, he was working behind the scenes, coordinating coincidences and circumstances to make his will happen. God is sovereign even when life doesn't make sense. God is sovereign even when life doesn't make sense. Esther's position was no accident, and neither is yours, wow woman. Think about where God has placed you and what God might have you do right where you are. Instead of annihilation, the Jews celebrated their deliverance. Who is waiting for their deliverance? Wow, woman, because of your obedience, Remember, you are in the kingdom for a time such as this. Against all odds, awake, arise, and advance. One woman, fix your crown. Your purpose is your superpower.